Alright, so trying to press this fingerboard using construction paper and wood glue was a bit of a failure, but I'm going to have another go at it. I'm at the shop. I've got access to my cardboard box of resin, and I'm going to try some proper micarta this time with just some colored paper. Alright, here's where the colored paper is stored at the shop. How's that for a color palette? Maybe? Yeah, that'll be enough. So on the previous attempt, I made the paper stock like really generously large, and my method's going to be a bit different this time, so I'm going to go ahead and just trim it down to a much more reasonable size. Yeah, there we go. That leaves me with a reasonable size to start with. So this is the order I think I'm going to try to go with. Unfortunately, the orange looks not very orange on camera. This is like a fluorescent orange. So for the main body of the board, it's going to be these plies: orange, yellow, green, blue. And you can see the plies are thick enough to be visible from edge on, which was one of the problems I ran into with my previous attempt. I just did like a random stack of colors, and all the different layers kind of just blurred together and made like it was almost brown. And then at the top, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do all of them, yeah, like that. So it's going to be orange top and bottom, and then I'm going to try to etch in a pattern on the top, or maybe I want to do it on the bottom. Anyway, I'm going to try to etch in a pattern to expose parts of these different layers to make some art or something. Maybe I'll do it on the bottom. I'll try it on the bottom. Yeah, I'll do the bottom, and we'll see how that works. But for now, I think it's a good stack. It's probably a little thicker than it needs to be, but I think it'll compress down and be good. So, all right, so this should be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to go with the total boat because it is a faster cure. And there we go. I'm just going to start with one pump. There you go, yep. Yeah, let's go 2. There we go. I'm just going to be working on a scrap of plywood here, and going to spend a minute stirring. So that's 2 minutes of stirring, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stack all these. And just do this. Okay. So these colors are being, so it's getting darker, but they're actually a lot more transparent once they're wetted than I was anticipating. And so for the top, where I'm trying to have the 4 colors in a row, that might not actually work. We'll just have to see. But maybe it'll be more suited for darker, more saturated colors rather than these really bright, light colors. This feels like, it doesn't feel like paper anymore. It feels like it's like thin plastic. It's weird. So I'm going to put the stack into this plastic bag. Take off my other glove. And try to square it up as best I can in the bag. Seems to be working okay. All right, so this seems like it's going to be fine. Look at that. So I'm going to take this and clamp it up. I'm going to go ahead and use this vise instead of a clamp. There we go. Okay. You can see probably there was quite a lot of squeeze out, and it slammed up good. So on the whole, I would say that was easier than trying to mess around with wood glue, and I know the results are going to be better, but we'll see how much better they are. The real drawback about working with the resin is it is really messy, and it's not water soluble. You can't wash it off your hands. And so you do have to wear gloves and be careful about what you get it on, unlike the wood glue. So I went ahead and pulled the mold out of the vise, and this is what we're left with. It looks really interesting because it seems to have picked up all of the layer lines and little artifacts going in. I can't tell if that's, I mean, that's got to be taken up on the resin itself. Right? Yeah. It's also interesting it took up those, the drill holes so well. I should drill those first, but I think I'll leave those later. So yeah, there's all my flashing, and it looks pretty good. The folds in the plastic, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, they're not as visible as they were with the plastic on. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. So I'm just doing some light hand sanding. You know, some very slight rounding and getting off all the little burrs. So before I finish sanding, I am going to drill those bolt holes out and then clean that up as I finish the sanding off. All right. Some pretty colorful little shavings there. See how that turned out. Looks perfect. All right, I'll finish cleaning that up. All right, so this is what we ended up with. I tried not to sand the surface too much. I did have to get rid of some of the burrs and sand those off. But I try to leave as much of this 3D printed texture as I could. That was not intentional, but I really like it, especially on the concave. The micarta made with the epoxy is noticeably way tougher than the other stuff I made. And it's also way easier to work with. So it's definitely not worth even bothering with anything other than epoxy for this type of construction. You can see that the layer lines on the side are nice and distinct. So separating the colors into the stacks really helped. However, you really can't make out the yellow still, can you? So I guess the light colors just need a little thicker layers. The green and the blue merge together, and you can kind of make out both green and blue. They really fade together. So hopefully I don't ruin this with the next step, but I'm going to try carving into the bottom and doing some sort of art and exposing some of those layers from the top. And we'll see how that goes. But for now, this is what I got. Alright, so this is the point where we get to see if this entire concept is worth anything. So I've drawn a little design on the back of the board, and I'm going to try to carve that design out with the Dremel, and you probably won't be able to see much from that view, so maybe we should change it and reveal the different colors underneath, and hopefully it makes it look really cool. So, and I could totally just screw up the whole thing. I tried to practice this design by carving into the bottom of a penny skate, but the plastic just melts, and I'm thinking my micarta hopefully won't do that, but let's see what happens. So this bit on the Dremel isn't really a sharp cutter. It's more of like a burr thing, and so it isn't cutting through the paper super well like a proper bit would. And so I'm kind of just using the knife to kind of scrape the inside walls to try to get it looking neat. And not make the colors so muddy from all the bits of paper that have gotten in there. Alright, I'd say that looks pretty good actually. So I'm going to go and clear coat this real quick, and I think that'll really help the color pop out, because right now it's still pretty gray. So we'll see how it looks after I do that. Okay, so here's the board after the clear coat's been put on. So the sides are really vivid. That turned out really well. The design on the bottom is a lot more vivid than it was before, but it's still not quite exactly what I was expecting. I was hoping for more of the transition between the colors to be visible, but you can't really see the yellow or the green all that much at all. It just kind of looks like orange with the visible blue. The places where I sanded and got a little bit of matte texture on the bottom ended up being lighter, and I wasn't expecting that. I think it might be because The clear coat I used just wets a little differently than the epoxy. So what I probably should have done is come back in with the epoxy and use the epoxy as a clear coat instead of a spray coat. But I didn't want to go back to the shop and get my epoxy. So there we go. That's the take 2 of the colored paper fingerboard. Longboard technology over and out.